Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 157. Newlywed shooting budget, $5K for actors, $2K for insurance, $2K for food and drink, $9K in the can. We only shot for 12 days. Now that's how you make an independent film. Edward Burns.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my indie film hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by Video Blocks. Now, if you guys are looking for stock footage, After Effects templates, motion graphics, Video Blocks is the site, man. I've been using them for years now. I use some clips of theirs in my movie This Is Meg for some stock footage. And this month alone, they're launching a new crazy collection of hundreds of new Unreal clips, including space, virtual reality, deep water, fantasy, and sci-fi footage. All of that comes free with your subscription, and it is a limited time. And you also get free 4K clips with your membership at no cost. And Video Blocks is now giving you 7 days of free downloads. Download a ton of stuff for free. Check it out, see what's going on with it. And remember, whatever you download during those 7 days is yours for free, royalty-free forever. So definitely give them a shot. So head over to videoblocks.com/indie, I-N-D-I-E. That's videoblocks.com/indie. Today's show is also sponsored by Digital Box Office. Now, Digital Box Office is a global provider of streaming movies, television, and all sorts of original content. DBO provides a dramatic new opportunity for indie filmmakers to gain previously unavailable global exposure and valuable analytics. Now, the service is going to be a data mine for Hollywood and for indie filmmakers, as Digital Box Office users are required to vote on the content that they watch on the platform via DBO's proprietary single one-click voting model. Now, you can submit your film today at upload.digitalboxoffice.tv, and you can browse their current selection at www.digitalboxoffice.tv. You can also download the app for iOS or Android at the Google Play and Apple App Store. So guys, 360 video. A lot of people have been talking about it. A lot of people say it's going to take over. A lot of people say it's the future of what everybody's going to be watching, and it's going to take over cinema and take over movies as we know it. I disagree wholeheartedly. I think it is another tool for storytelling in its own way. Same way as video games are. The same way video games are not taking over movies. Movies are movies. They will always be movies in one way, shape, or form. 360 video can tell certain types of stories, but not the kind of stories, I don't see Martin Scorsese or David Fincher using 360 video to tell a story. It's an experience and it's a ride in many ways. And you can try to tell a good story, a narrative without question, but it's not what we consider cinema, where a director is editing and telling you where to look in the scene, as opposed to getting all the information at once and you got to go find the information. It's a different kind of storytelling. But I wanted to bring someone on the show who's an expert in the field, someone who really understands 360, the technology, the ever-changing technology, how to actually make a living doing it, and so on. So I invited on the show Josh Gibson, who is a 360 video specialist. He's the founder of 360videoacademy.com and is pretty much, kind of knows what he's talking about when it comes to 360 video. So I wanted to bring him on the show so he can kind of explain it to us layman's on how you could do it, what the cost is to get into it, and if you can even make money as doing it as a filmmaker. So I won't waste any more time. Let's get right into it. Enjoy my conversation with Josh Gibson from 360 Video Academy. I'd like to welcome to the show Josh Gibson, man. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Alex. It's good to be here.
I wanted you on the show because I am just dangerous. I just know enough to be dangerous in the 360 world. So I wanted to get a professional to come on, and I'm just gonna beat you up with a lot of questions, if that's okay.
No, that's totally great. Shoot, I'm excited for it.
All right, cool, man. So let's first and foremost, what the hell is 360 video for people who don't know?
That's a good question. It's kind of something that's been around for a while. I mean, you look at like Google Street View, you look at virtual tours on maybe some real estate sites. Like it's sort of this technology of the 360-degree panorama has been around for a while, but it's sort of been stuck in the still world until a few years back when people started messing around with GoPros and trying to get smaller cameras and putting them all together so that they're shooting in all directions and trying to capture 360-degree video. So that's kind of where the explosion happened, and when people started realizing, hey, GoPro's not too expensive, and a lot of companies like Color and other companies, including GoPro, started seeing a real future in this, and they started building software for it, and and the rest is history. So it's basically putting a bunch of cameras together, shooting in every single direction, and syncing all those cameras up, and then stitching them together later on a computer. So it's kind of a process, but pretty simple. You're wrapping a sphere around a video, and that's how it works.
Now there's, I mean, from the points of GoPro rigs, now they're actually coming out with cameras that are built into a sphere. I saw some of them in Cinegear last year, and companies are coming out with those by themselves with their own proprietary software and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually really, exactly right. So there's a few cameras that technically, I think there's one that shoots 270 degrees, and it's just one lens with one sensor. But as a matter of getting the full 360 degrees, you actually still technically need two cameras at least. And there's some, like Kodak makes a couple, the SBK, where you put two cameras back to back, basically with super, fisheye wide angle lenses on each one of those. So you basically have two, half domes that you're getting, and then you're just wrapping them together, or that you're, joining them together and aligning them. But when you're doing with 360 though, I mean, the kind of 360 that I've seen that looks good is somewhat distorted, but not completely distorted like a fisheye would be. Right. So that's good. I mean, that's what we're kind of going for, right? It's not like this kind of distorted fisheye, because if that's the point, then we're back in Beastie Boys videos back in the day. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of my opinion too. I think the Samsung Gear is obviously another example of, the two camera system, and those are great and they work pretty well. But the issue you run into with those two lens systems is obviously at the very edge of any fisheye lens, there's going to be distortion. Pixels are going to get stretched. So if you're going to be trying to stretch those back out to make them undistorted in a 360-degree, viewing space, it's going to be a little bit blurrier. You're going to see some, aliasing or whatever on those edges. So that's why people started moving into the, multi-camera rigs where you have, 10 GoPros, 20 GoPros, or, any other small camera like the Blackmagic, camera that you can put on there. So people have been experimenting with all sorts of different setups. But obviously the other downside is when you add more cameras, you're going to run into more stitching complications, with all the weird lines and stuff.
We'll get into stitching later.
Yes.
I have questions about stitching.
That one's fun.
Everyone's asking like, what the hell is stitching? I'm like, don't worry. We'll get to it soon enough. Ladies and gentlemen. So a real basic question is, what's the difference between 360 and VR, virtual reality? Because they're kind of similar.
Yeah, they are really similar, and they're used interchangeably a lot. That's a really great question. So VR, if we want to throw the dictionary at it, is basically kind of like the video games that you see out there where people are walking around in an actual 3D space. They have goggles on. It's usually hooked up to a really high-powered PC or something, a computer. And they also have those little things they're holding in their hands where they can interact. And, you see the cool video games where you're shooting zombies all around you or something. So that's VR, where you can interact completely with the environment. You can walk, with your actual 2 feet, and the goggles on your face are basically just, displaying what you should be seeing in the video game or whatever. So there aren't a lot of actual VR video, if you will. And before I get into that, sorry, I'll talk about the difference. So 360 video, on the other hand, is basically captured video wrapped in a sphere around a user. And the only thing that the user can actually interact with in the video is where they're looking, which direction they're looking in. The filmmaker still has control basically over how tall that viewer is and where they are standing in that space. So with 360 video, you can look around, you can move your phone around if you're watching on a phone or a tablet or whatever, or on a computer, you can click around and move, your direction, but you can't actually walk, anywhere. You can't say, oh, what's that rock over there? I'm going to go see what's behind it. You can't do that quite yet with 360 video, but in a VR world, it's all built on a computer. So everything is, all the data is there. You could walk around and see what's behind the rock, et cetera, et cetera. So
got it. So it's, I actually saw that thing on Facebook once. I think I was watching Casey Neistat. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. With the Samsung rig, and he posted something on Facebook, and it said, "Move your phone left." I'm like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "Oh my god!" I'm looking through, saying, "Jesus, this is witchcraft. It's insane."
It's really weird.
It was the weirdest thing ever. Like, how did they know? It was, and Facebook has, I guess you could do it on. You could upload 360 video on Facebook now, and I was like, "Wow, that's insane!" Like, just the things you can do with that are amazing. Which brings me to my next question. What kind of stories can you tell with 360 video? Can you shoot a feature film with 360?
Oh, that's the $1 million question. There's been a lot of really cool experimentation going on. So I think the big question right now, at least in my mind, is, what future does 360 video have with like documentary filmmaking versus like narrative fiction filmmaking, right? So there have been a lot of like horror. The horror genre has been obviously all over 360 because you have all this new space to work with to jump and scare people, and I've seen a lot of recreations, like historical recreations, in 360 video, and of course that's my background is in documentary filmmaking, so that's kind of where I've been working mostly. But yeah, the short answer is everybody's doing 360, and there have been full length feature films made in it.
Can you name some?
I actually don't know the name off the top of my head. It's been pretty recent, but there have been a few like TV networks and stuff that have thrown, pretty big chunks of money at VR and 360. And there's a lot of experimentation going on with it right now. So I think it's been living a lot in the documentary world. And I can look up some of these and give you links and stuff. And you can throw them in the show notes. But
sure.
It's been living a lot in the documentary world. But I think a lot of fiction filmmakers and like horror and stuff like that have been really interested in doing it. But another kind of unforeseen huge genre of 360 filmmaking is the education world. Mm-hmm. There have been a lot of universities, especially at the most recent NAB when I was out there. I met up with a lot of professors and administrators, education people that were from all over the country, all over the world, wanting to implement VR and 360 into their teaching, which is awesome because obviously you can take people out on a virtual field trip of anywhere you want, whether that be Mars or just a canyon up the street of the school, and that, as a matter of fact, that's a project I'm working on now with a local university here. Is their geology department is hiring me to do some work with them to basically do some drone footage and some really cool like virtual walkthroughs of this canyon, this really interesting canyon nearby, so that they can show their students.
That's insane. So yeah, basically like, okay, let's go to the pyramids of Giza, and you can go to the pyramids of Giza or the Great Wall of China or any of these places.
Right. And you can overlay graphics and put really cool, text, or you could even throw, 3D animated time lapses if you want, saying like, hey, this is what it looked like 10,000 years ago. Now let's jump to today.
Stop it.
People can just be standing in the middle of this really cool experience, right? So it's awesome. And then the cool part is people can watch it on their phones now. They can watch it on their tablets. They can do it anywhere. So you don't need to go to some fancy, planetarium or anything. It's very accessible.
So unlike VR, you don't need a helmet or a pair of goggles to look at 360 video, as long as you have it it's being projected in a proper way, correct? Like on YouTube or something.
Right. You can technically, you can watch it on a computer, just on a laptop or, whatever, and click around with the mouse, or you can watch it. You can hold your phone out in front of you, your tablet. Obviously, the most ideal way to watch VR or 360 is through goggles. It's a little bit more immersive that way, with some headphones on and stuff. And, there's spatial audio, which interacts. The audio actually can track to your head too. So that's a whole other topic as well.
I was going to say audio mixing for this must be a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's complex, man. It's I'm not an audio engineer by any stretch of the imagination, so I can't speak to the nitty gritty too much. But they're making it more simple. I've been messing around in beta testing for a few companies, some software that basically allows you to mix the audio in like a Dolby surround sort of format, 5.1, 7.1, and then basically what happens is you tell the software where is your point one, your base point, and then as soon as your head turns, the software in either the phone or the goggles has to actually process and change and mix that audio on the spot in real time.
Come on.
So it's pretty wild.
That's insanity, man. I mean, we're starting to get into Star Trek world, man.
It's crazy.
We're only a few steps away from the holodeck.
I know. Yeah. And then maybe the next thing is being able to create hamburgers from the little touch screen, right?
Oh God, right? Imagine like, and that's just there. Right. Did you? By the way, I hope the audience enjoyed my sound effects.
Okay. I know I did.
I appreciate it. So now that let's say we're gonna go out and shoot some stuff. What's some pre-shoot equipment that you would need to just do a basic 360 shoot?
So yeah, that's a great question. I mean, with the thing with 360 cameras, you can go as small as like the Samsung Gear, or Kodak's got one of those dual camera setups too, where it's got the two cameras back to back. But really with 360 video, I mean, you could go all the way up to the Ozo too, the Nokia Ozo. That's like a $45,000 camera. That's completely professional, global shutter, 13 stops of dynamic range kind of thing. So that one's great. But with 360 video, you can go, as small as you really want. And it's kind of threatening and it feels a little bit scary to go out and shoot it. But as long as you're holding your arm steady or if you're on a tripod and you're just shooting like landscape stuff, pre-shoot equipment, all you really need is, the camera and kind of a sense of imagination.
Really? And how do you record the audio?
So the audio can usually be recorded on the actual device. Samsung Gear has a few microphones, and the Kodak does as well. There actually are even a few. I think it's called the Insta360. It's a company from, I'm not even sure where they're from, but they have a cool little, basically a small 360 camera that you can plug into the bottom of your phone, either Android or iOS, and you can live stream 360 video now on Facebook or YouTube. So, I mean, I'm sure vloggers and stuff are going to be, all over this and wanting to get into that. So that's kind of fun. You can be, taking people on a tour and stuff of, if you're vacationing or, talking to the camera, they can look at you or they can look behind you.
Or if you're on a film set and you want to give the people a tour of the film set, that would be a great marketing for everybody listening.
Totally awesome.
That would blow people's mind as far as great content and great material that you can use for marketing. I mean, imagine just doing a 360 table read. Of all the actors. I mean, you could do. My marketing mind's turning on now. So that would be.
Well, I'm sure they're going to implement it with Skype and with any other. I'm sure it's going to be a business solution here pretty soon, where if you want to beam into a meeting or something, across the country or across the globe, you can just sit there and it'll be like you're actually sitting there. You can look around, see who's talking. It won't be like a webcam that they set up in the corner trying to, see everybody. It'll just be a 360 camera sitting in a chair somewhere, and the CEO or whoever can sit there and look around and chat, and it'll be pretty cool.
Like the Jedi Council.
Yes, exactly. That's the goal. That's the
goal. Jedi Council. Boom.
Yeah.
Just with better dialogue. But so what are some of the pitfalls that you should avoid when shooting 360 video?
So with 360 video, I think one of the biggest complications, one of the newest thing, or not complications, but one of the biggest difficulties is a lot of creative control is stripped from the creator. So I think a lot of people go into it expecting to still be able to like frame the shot, if you will.
It's 360. How can you frame a shot?
Exactly. So that's kind of a new frustrating thing. And I even remember going out and doing, like previs or, tech scouts, location scouts for different shoots. And it's kind of weird because you stand there and you're like, oh, that's a nice angle. That's a nice frame. Oh, wait, I can't actually have an angle. This isn't a 2D thing, a box where I'm saying, okay, here are the edges of the frame. There's no lenses that I choose to shoot with. I can't, really change a lot of those things. All I can really choose is where the person is standing and how tall they are. So obviously there's still a lot of cool things you can do with that, with movement and drones or whatever you can come up with. But that's kind of the first hurdle that a lot of people have to get over is understanding that when you're framing a shot in quotes, you've got to basically stand in one place and kind of look in every single direction and say, is this interesting over here? Is this interesting over there? And then you've also got to say, well, maybe I don't want it to be interesting other than this one little place. I want to draw attention to that one part of the 360-degree space. So there's a lot of new questions to ask yourself, and that's kind of one of the bigger, artistic hurdles to overcome. There's plenty of technological and other ones we can get into, but that was one of the bigger ones that I remember going through as a creator. coming from the two-dimensional world of filmmaking. It was kind of interesting to be like, wow, this is a totally new way of thinking and a totally new way of storytelling.
Now, I was watching your demo on your website, and I saw you in the corner. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question. How do you hide or remove gear, crew, camera operators, etc.?
Right. That's a great question. That's actually something I go into a lot in the things I teach in the course. But basically, you have to make a decision whether or not you can even remove yourself. Like I was filming at that Holy Color Festival. Mm-hmm. And that was practically impossible. I mean, I could have tried to paint myself out, but basically the short answer is it's simple techniques like that you've learned in Photoshop or After Effects, where you're compositing out different things in a 2D space, like on a 2D shot. But with 360 video, obviously, it's how many ever more times work to make sure everything gets painted out in that 360 space. So there's a few plugins like Skybox Metal. Metal's Skybox suite is really awesome. That's the one I use. I also use a mixture of like Mocha Pro and Mocha VR with Premiere and After Effects to and I have a little bit of background in visual effects, not tons, but I had enough that I could figure out basically how to convert this weird sphere video, this equirectangular, what they call it, video, mm-hmm. Into something that I could work with as a VFX artist. But it's basically the same techniques, as painting out people in two-dimensional video. It's just being able to convert that back and distort it properly so that it looks right in, that sphere in that 360 video.
So I was going through your site and I wanted to ask you, what is AutoPano Video Pro?
Oh yeah, that is my favorite software. Okay. It's basically the stitching software for it's kind of the first step in the whole process. So once you've shot everything, whether you've got 10 cameras or 3 cameras or whatever, basically you obviously have a bunch of SD cards or you have a bunch of different video files, however you get them. And what AutoPano Video does is it basically takes all those videos and it will smartly sync and allows you to easily either by an audio cue or a visual clap or something, you can sync them all up, and then it basically finds all those little intricate points and stitches them all together. So obviously the idea with 360 video is when you're shooting with 10 cameras, you want to have overlap right on each one of those cameras, so that there's a little bit of wiggle room as far as how you're stitching and how you're kind of melding them together to make the edges look seamless. And that's kind of what AutoPano Video takes care of. And it gives you a lot of tools to customize and to really tweak and make things look just right. And there's also a partner program called AutoPano Giga that I believe has been around a lot longer than AutoPano Video. And AutoPano Giga is just basically another program that has done the still version. So people that did Google Street View, or that the really awesome people that would go on and add 360 photos of the Eiffel Tower or something on Google Earth. I remember looking at those even as a kid. They all used programs very similar to AutoPano Giga. So the AutoPano Video is basically the same thing, but just for video.
So stitching, basically, for layman terms, is basically just because you're overlapping the video, all the video frames of all the cameras you're using in the rig, they overlap. So you got to kind of have to melt them together or composite them together in some way. And stitching is the term you use, and that's what basically stitching is. And AutoPano Video kind of helps you tremendously by doing that.
Yes, that is exactly right. So I know a few people that not a few people, but there's people that I've heard do their stitching in programs like Fusion, from Blackmagic, or they use Nuke and stuff. And there's plenty of there's always a million ways to skin a cat as far as the post production goes. But the one I really like to use that makes it pretty simple and gives you still power user customization options is AutoPano Video. Yeah.
Now, is there? But I saw some at the Cinegear. I saw some setups that were doing auto stitching, like it was automatically just doing it for you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, they've got, I mean, the Nokia Ozo has proprietary software. I believe the Jaunt actually is entirely cloud-based. So when you go out and shoot with the Jaunt camera, you just upload your media to the cloud and they do all the processing and stitching for you.
Stop it.
Yeah, so it's pretty efficient. Obviously, it's like, and I'm sure you pay for it on the back end. But,
I'm sure.
Right. It's really awesome. The only downside, I think, to those kinds of solutions, and this isn't really a downside, but you do need to go in and add, finishing touches. So if there are minor stitch problems, obviously the human eye can notice weird aberrations a lot easier and more efficiently than like a computer could. But that said, I think it won't be, another 2 or 3 years before computer stitching is completely awesome. Google's got the Google Jump program. They're working with all sorts of they haven't opened up their API yet, but they're working with all sorts of camera companies. And they've got some really, really awesome like AI driven stitching. And Facebook even has some stitching solutions as well. So I think that's kind of the holy grail right now, is a lot of companies are looking for a seamless, a perfect 100% awesome stitching solution, so that filmmakers no longer have to worry about all that, technical stitching and stuff like that. But when you do want to fix minor issues or polish things off and make things look a little bit better or add little embellishments here and there, you still do need to work in that equirectangular format. So, but yeah, that stitching, hopefully, eventually, I'm very sure will be automated soon.
Now, are there any tips that you can give the listeners to do a perfect stitch?
That's just
a couple tips.
Yeah, a couple tips. So I think with stitching, the big thing is just being detail oriented. I think a lot of people either try to just run through it quickly, and they don't want to really spend time looking through each possible angle of their shot. The best way to do that is just to go through and watch it over and over again and look up stuff and make sure that it looks good. Sorry, did you hear that? Sorry.
No, keep going.
Okay, there's a little notification that came up.
That's all good.
But detail oriented, I think, is important. Being able to watch through your shot and notice things, because the biggest draw, I think, or the biggest important thing with stitching for me is, as soon as somebody notices an obvious stitch error, it kind of pulls them out of the magic. As a viewer. And obviously you don't need to pull your hair out about it and, spend thousands of hours like making everything look flawless. But I think that's the biggest thing, is to realize how important a good stitch is. And then I think the other thing is to just identify, and be smart about your shooting. That's honestly the best advice I can give anybody, is the magic really doesn't happen in post-production as much as it happens in actually production and shooting. So if you shoot smart and you understand the limitations and the possibilities of your camera, then you're going to avoid a lot of headaches in post-production.
Now, did you? I'm assuming you saw Justin Lin's short film Help.
Yes, awesome.
That's a 360 short film. So that's a really good example of a narrative story.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, they shot that on Reds, so they got a huge.
It was when you got Justin Lin money.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it was Google who paid for it. So
right. Oh yeah, I mean, it was a huge undertaking. But yeah, that was also a really good example of kind of the mixed media, if you will, of the real life captured footage from the Reds and that 360 rig that they built, but then also adding in 3-dimensional elements that hid a lot, I'm sure, of those. Any stitching problems they had, they could kind of paint out, or they could hide behind a monster or whatever. So that's actually what a lot of people are moving towards. A lot of filmmakers that I've seen, they're actually shooting a lot of just kind of base plates in actual 360, and then they actually go in and shoot a lot of the assets and all the the characters and things that are happening in the frame on like a green screen, just in a normal studio, and then they composite those into that 360 space. So there's really a lot of ways you can do this, and a lot of people are experimenting with all sorts of different ways. So it's really exciting.
So what programs do you use to edit 360 video?
I just use Adobe Premiere. So it's basically the exact same thing. You're editing exactly how you would normally, with 2D stuff. Premiere has just recently upgraded and added a kind of a 360 view button, like a toggle you can choose on the program monitor, which is really handy. So you mostly can you can edit in that equirectangular video format is what they call it, where it looks like it's just really wide angle. It looks kind of weird. But then you can click a little button and you can actually, hit play on your keyboard and actually watch in real time what your viewer would be seeing or what they could be seeing. So Premiere has been really good at adopting the technologies as well, but luckily it's exactly the same as editing 2D video.
And for visual effects, any of the standard visual effects packages would work?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of another difficult thing when you're wrapping 360 video in that sphere from the equirectangular format. A lot of like blur effects or pixelate or whatever effects you might have added initially, even color correction sometimes can be a little difficult because at the very end, at the 180 degree line right behind the viewer, sometimes you'll get a hard line because the effect doesn't know how to basically repeat infinitely in that sphere. Mm-hmm. So it actually has to sort of recalculate things. And Skybox or Metal, the company, has been doing a really good job at coming out with transitions, coming out with effects like blur and sharpen and things like that.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Basic stuff right now, but I'm sure it'll get more advanced, in the near future. They're coming out with those effects that are actually 360 ready. So right now, it's kind of a lot of experimentation to see if it'll work, and most of the time they do. But as far as actually having 360 degree or VR ready effects, I think that's still something that needs to be worked on, and a lot of companies, I'm sure, are doing that now. So.
Now, how do you deliver your final product? What format do you deliver it on?
So the format is still the same. It's just a QuickTime video. But with Premiere, what you do when you actually export, there used to not be this. Actually, before Premiere updated, there was a little program you had to download from YouTube that uploaded metadata into this video file. However, you export it, whether it be an MP4 or an MOV, and then that metadata basically told whichever player you uploaded it to that it was a 360 video, and then it needed to be treated differently, right? So the big issue with delivering 360 video right now is you need to be able to deliver it on a platform that can actually view 360 video. Because if you just play it on, without that metadata on like a TV or anything, it'll just play back, at that weird stretched out format, which is not what you want, obviously. So when you're working with clients, Premiere has updated their thing where you just click a little box that says this is VR video or this is 360 video, and it'll actually automatically upload that metadata into the video file, and then you just deliver the video file as if you were sending any other 2D video. And then obviously you just need to make sure that you're either watching it on a headset, or if they're wanting to do like web distribution, you need to use a program or use like YouTube or Facebook or something like Wistia, or Vimeo even has 360 video now. So I'm sure it'll become more affluent in the future. But yeah, you just need to make sure that they understand that you can't just watch it absolutely anywhere. You need to upload it to a program that can, or like YouTube or a service that can actually support playing back 360 video.
So with all this said, after all the stuff we've talked about, it's fair to say that this is not you need to know your stuff to kind of shoot this. It's not like grabbing a camera and going out and, shooting. Like, you really need to understand the technology. You really need to understand the workflow, the post workflow, which is a lot more complicated than just shooting a narrative on a 2D situation.
Right. I mean, it's definitely, there's some simplicity and stuff, and I've been in it for a long time, so it's probably hard for me to really step back and see. But I remember starting out, how complex it was, and, it basically having to experiment a lot of hair pulling, a lot of getting super mad, trying to figure out how stuff worked, wanting to punch the computer and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's honestly, once you understand the big picture, it makes the whole process a lot smoother. So I think that's probably one of the big frustrating things is people try to jump into it without really understanding the end and the beginning and the middle and how, like you said, how the workflow goes. So it's still very complicated. It's not as complicated as I think people. I definitely don't want to scare anybody away. That's kind of my goal with what I've been doing. I definitely want people to come and be creators in it, and I think that was a pleasant surprise that I had too. Is like, okay, this is complex, this is hard. There's things to learn, But it's doable. Even a dumb guy like me can figure it out and and learn how to do all this stuff and have fun doing it. So it's kind of that blend where, people can save themselves a lot of headache if they do a little bit of homework at the beginning. But yeah, I mean, if they wanted to jump in, they could. If they have, hundreds of hours of free time and, obviously know how to use Google and stuff, you're like, sure, go ahead. There's plenty of random places all over the internet to learn how to do it. Just like anything, I guess, right?
But you've been doing this for a while, so you've seen the technology change dramatically in the course of the time that you've been in it. So it's getting easier. Things that used to take you hours to do, now you could do in minutes, purely because of technology.
Yeah, and and honestly, I haven't even been in it as long as some people have, and even the past few years that I've been doing it, it's attention it's getting from big companies is, I think, the best news that we could be having right now, because all that money and research is now going into it, and companies are coming out with really awesome technology that helps, obviously with the stitching. That's the biggest thing right now, that I think people are going to be trying to simplify. And then obviously as well, shooting with 360 is going to become better and better as well. Because you look at like the Nokia Ozo, and that camera is professional. It's great, but it weighs a bunch. It weighs like 20 pounds, and it's very difficult to work with as far as like a documentary filmmaker that just wants to go out and shoot. Right? It is battery powered, but it's like you need so much gear. And you kind of look at the evolution of the DSLR, right? Where that sort of blew up. The idea that indie filmmakers can go out and just make a movie, right? They could go out.
Don't get me started.
Like backpack of stuff.
Don't get me started, please. Right. Don't get me started with the DSLRs.
Sure there's definitely the downside, right?
I mean, God.
I hope that with 360 video, the technology gets to the place where it's simpler, and obviously it will be. I mean, in the future it will be. But as of right now, it's still pretty hard to do, complex. It's it takes a little bit of expertise, but it's also something that if somebody really wants to do, they should and they can. So
now, I mean, I would equate 360 video a little bit with the 3D resurgence back in the 2009, 2010, 11, where 3D was all the rage and everything was going to be shot in 3D, and everybody was running around trying to get the rigs together. And oh my God, I need my software. I can't edit 3D. I can't color grade 3D and all of this stuff. And I remember all that. I was sitting in presentations and in rental houses, and they were all trying to sell their new 3D rig, and James Cameron was coming out, and the only 3D I've ever seen that I liked was Avatar. On Hugo was really good too, because you had two masters working in the format. But I think that's a little bit of that's happening with 360. But unlike 3D, in my personal opinion, I think 360 has a much brighter future. I think it's something that will be around for many, many years to come, and will evolve into something that will eventually turn into the holodeck.
Right. And that was honestly the first thing I remember getting into 360. And I work at a place called The Good Line. That's kind of like my full-time gig. And my bosses, my colleagues were talking to me about 360 video a few years back. And that was kind of the first thing we thought, is like, okay, is this just another smell-o-vision? Is this right? I mean, is it just another gimmick? And we kind of started thinking it was at first, but yeah, like you say, once I think everybody started catching on to the marketing possibilities, the education possibilities, the entertainment possibility, like it really just fits all these different, needs that a lot of companies and institutions and services have. Medical, you name it. It's, all sorts of ways to train people. I've seen really cool studies done with people that are, in end of life care, elderly folks that are going through a lot of pain or Alzheimer's, and they actually give them 360 goggles or VR goggles to like sit at a beach or to go on a walk. And they actually have shown, through MRIs and stuff, that it's helping with their depression, their anxiety,
of course,
pain levels. So it's awesome. It really goes across the whole spectrum of how it can help people.
It is turning into like Total Recall and all these old sci-fi movies. Yeah. It really is like, right. What was that? The Sixth Day. I remember where Michael Rappaport, an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie called The Sixth Day. I think it was called The Sixth Day. And he had a three-dimensional, girlfriend, and all but I'm not saying that this is turning into that, but I'm like, wow, we're all getting to that place where you can sit on a beach and I can be in Hawaii. I can have the sound and I can have I can't feel the
Right.
heat of the sun, but I can almost smell it and see.
Oh, they're
and
getting
listen
there.
to
I'm
it.
sure they're going to, I mean, they're doing research now where you put on gloves and it actually will give you tactile feedback. So you can touch things and feel like fur. You can feel,
Jesus.
glass. It's getting scary.
It's the Matrix.
I mean,
We're
they're
getting
gonna
into the
have-
Matrix. We're getting into the Matrix.
Oh, it totally is. I mean, there might even be people I think it's, Inception, where people are dreaming and they pay to go to these little underground places just to stay in their dreams because they like it better than real life. And I honestly would not think that that's too far off. Eventually we're going to get to that point where, yeah, it's wild. I mean, people are even using it for, I even heard of a dentist that was using it and is not needing to use painkiller at all when he's doing fillings or root canals because people are so into the VR experience. I mean, they just use VR goggles instead of painkiller. It's wild. So it's
awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think the exciting thing that I remember seeing at NAB just this last time is we are actually very, very close to actually getting VR video. So as I explained before, VR is when you can walk around in a space and look around objects and stuff. It's not just looking where you're at. They're actually coming up with cameras like the Lytro and other cameras that are basically light field capture. So it's more than just capturing, the brightness of the reflection of light like a normal camera does or the color of whatever the reflection is. It's actually capturing depth information.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And it will be able to 3D scan an environment in real time, and then you can literally walk around, at a sporting event, or it'll take virtual field trips to the next level because you can go up and who knows, maybe you can go touch rocks and you can. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the sky's the limit, really, on how this technology will develop. So that and that's kind of where I think we saw too, kind of coming back to your original question, that it's definitely more than a gimmick, I think, at this point, because I think people are realizing this is kind of the future of how we present information to people remotely. I mean, it will make the world that much smaller. You can go swimming in the ocean, and then the next second you can be walking on Mars from 3D scans from the rover.
I think at this point for filmmakers, I don't see it how it can turn into something for narrative filmmaking per se.
Yeah.
Like I saw the Justin Lin thing, and that's great and it's awesome, but that's not a film. That's an experience. It's like
Totally.
it's almost like a ride. It's almost like a not carnival ride, but like some sort of Disney or Universal ride where you kind of experience something.
Absolutely.
It's different than filmmaking. It's different than television or movies or anything like that. It's
right,
because that medium is about a creator, director telling you, I need you to look at this now. I need you to look at that now.
Totally.
Now, so you can't get that with 360, but but the other things that are available, what you can do with it is massive. So can you real quickly tell the audience a few places like, hey, I'm going to get into the 360 world now. I'm a filmmaker. Where can I make some money?
That's a great question. Yeah. Honestly, the biggest place right now, I think, is education. That is the biggest market right now to get involved with. So there's a lot of schools all over the country, all over the world, whether that be high schools or universities. Obviously, usually have a little bit bigger budgets. They're all looking for everything from consultants to actual practitioners, which is what I'm doing with the university here in Utah. Where they're wanting to create this 360 content, and they're wanting to make it interactive and interesting and fun. So there's a huge market in education. And I would think the next one, real estate, is obviously a big one, because people, real estate agents are also always looking for, ways to sell homes innovatively and better. There's other cameras like the Matterport that do the photo still virtual tours. Those are cool. But I think 360 video has a space there. Yeah, I mean, education and real estate, I think, are kind of the biggest low-hanging fruit right now. As far as like actually doing branding and marketing, I think that's also another big area. That's kind of where I've been, in my wheelhouse for the past while. Like I was out in the Philippines directing a video showcasing a factory sewer for a company named Cotopaxi, where we followed a sewer in one of their factories, kind of in a day in the life, kind of with his really adorable family and his home and everything. So I think there's a lot of companies that are wanting to do that as well. We've seen a lot of like liquor companies or companies that want to show, okay, this is how this product is made.
The
this
factory
is our origin, right? They want to see the people working with their hands and stuff. So I think there's a lot of marketing and branding work that will be coming out soon as well. And I think I actually tend to agree with you that narrative filmmaking is cool with 360, but like you say, it's more of an experience. And I think documentary filmmaking can still have a place with 360, and I think it still will. I don't know if it's still called a documentary, film. It's definitely different because, like you say, you're not really directing where people are looking.
Yeah, but like Planet Earth or National Geographic, any kind of wildlife documentary. Right. I mean, it's built for that kind of stuff. But like, are you going to see, Fahrenheit 9/11 in 360? Don't really think so. Bowling for Columbine, not really the 360 kind of movie. Right. But I think for those kind of documentaries, anything nature based is or anything that you like. I'm going to go see how olive oil is made, for lack of a better term. I'm going to go to or wine, and I'm going to go to the winery, and you walk through the thing. But it's an experience. Yeah. It's different. It's not it is kind of narrative, but it's different. Right. So I think we're still we're still in the infancy, basically, of this whole.
Absolutely, I think people are still feeling out, where it's used well for, why we should use it over another tool. And I guess it comes back to that foundation. Something that I've always tried to live by in my career is that story is king. Your content is what matters. It doesn't matter if you're shooting with fancy camera or not fancy camera. Obviously, tools are important. You want to have as good a gear as you can. But 360 video, VR, that kind of thing is just another tool in the toolbox, right? So if you've got a story or an experience or a message or anything that you're wanting to share with somebody, you should always still consider 360 as a possibility. But also, I think people should avoid and try to avoid the pitfall of shooting a 360 just because it's cool. You see a lot of stuff where even commercials and stuff, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, it's cool 360, but I don't know why they decided to shoot it in 360 other than just to have 360 in the metadata, right?
Right.
So I think it's another tool in the toolkit, and people should respect it, obviously, and understand its power and how it can be used, but also avoid using it just for the sake of using it.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your awesome course on 360? Because I know you have a course telling us how to master this technology, sir.
Yeah. No, it's I appreciate that. It's been a fun project of love. Basically, I put a lot of time into it. Basically, it's the problem that I wanted to solve. Where if you don't want to spend hours on Google, if you don't want to watch random tutorial videos, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. I don't mean to bash anything, but I kind of just wanted to put everything in one place, and I'm kind of OCD about that. So I had a lot of fun organizing it and figuring out the process and the workflow. And I wanted to put it all into one place where people could learn the A to Z, right? So pre-production, everything from pre-production all the way to delivery. While I'm talking about this as well, I'm also continually adding to the course, and I do kind of these virtual job shadows, if you will, where I'll be editing and putting together videos of me actually out working. I've got that geology shoot here coming up in a few weeks, and I've got a whole crew ready to go out, and we're going to go shoot the video, obviously, but I'm also going to be doing education and teaching while I'm doing the project. So I'll be talking to the camera, explaining why I'm doing certain things, so people can kind of come along and see how I work and see the choices that I'm making and how I'm making them, why I'm making them. So it's a really cool course. It's a place, it's kind of a community as well that I'd like to build where, serious 360 filmmakers are wanting to come for feedback. They're wanting to be able to learn new things and kind of come to a place that's continually updating with, the latest and greatest information. That's kind of why I did it, because I love 360 video. I'm passionate about it. And, I feel like, people need to come together and learn together, and I think it could be a really cool place.
Yeah, and Hustlers, the tribe, Josh has given us a cool discount on the course, and I'll leave that in the show notes, and I'll talk a little bit about that after we're done with this interview, but I'll give you all of that cool information. So now, Josh, I have a few questions I always ask all of our guests, so please prepare yourself for the Oprah questions.
Okay. All right. I'm ready.
First and foremost, what advice would you give a filmmaker who's just wanting to jump into the 360 realm?
Wow. That's a great question. The best advice I can give is to worry more about creating and getting stuff made than what people are going to think about it, and to, and B, how you're going to market it. I think that's one of the biggest downsides I see about people starting out is they're worried so much about their keywords. They're worried about their SEO. They're worried about, all the technicalities of it, but they're not stressing as much on the actual creating and making and going out and making mistakes and having fun and enjoying the process. So that's what I would say. Go out and make, and worry later about how to get, the clients or get, the views or whatever. I think the important part is going out and creating and going through that process.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Oh man, that is a good question.
I told you.
Yeah, it's deep. Okay. I would say, gosh, I still even struggle with it, I think, but I think I'm getting a little bit better at not worrying about what other people think about my work. Mm-hmm. So obviously you need to make money. You need to, your work needs to be what other people want a lot of the time. But I've learned that the reason anybody gets into filmmaking or, any kind of art, I think for that matter, is to obviously, it's fulfilling to you, right? To making it for whatever it's worth. And sometimes people don't like it. Sometimes people do. I think the biggest thing is to go through that world and take note of feedback.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Take note of constructive criticism, but also don't take it too personally, and don't let it affect your work. Don't let it discourage you from moving on. If you have to make stuff that people hate for a few years, that's part of the process, and go through that and make it, and then you'll learn and grow, and eventually you'll be making stuff that everybody wants to see. And I think that was kind of a lesson that I'm still learning, even where you just want to learn how to, I guess, have thick skin in a way, right?
Oh, you definitely need that in this business. Yeah. in 180, in 360, in 90, in all degrees, you need thick skin.
That's true.
So name 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Oh, gosh.
It won't be on your gravestone, just 3 that come to your mind.
They come to my mind. Let's see. Gosh. So I always answer that. I probably will get judged by all my, film school, nerds, cinephiles, but Tommy Boy.
Yes.
Yes. It's kind of a shameless plug. Dude, love that movie.
Come on. It's Chris Farley.
It's gold. It's classic. It's got everything you need, the laughing, the crying. It's totally one of those movies for me. Okay. Let me see here.
Yeah, I know. When you ever do these lists, they're like, so Akira Kurosawa and Bergman. I'm like, no, man, Tommy Boy. I know, right? Tommy Boy.
Yeah, I could get into the film school stuff.
Sure, of course.
That's boring, right?
Yeah. All right, so Tommy Boy, okay.
One of the more recent ones that I saw that I absolutely loved was Logan. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
God, it's so amazing.
Loved it. It's so good.
It's a spiritual. It's a spiritual experience.
Oh, absolutely. I was blown away with how down to earth a superhero movie could be. And that's what I was really impressed with. It had all that superhero action, but it just felt so raw and gritty, and it was great. So that was one I really loved too. And then let's go into the documentary world. I think one that I saw at Sundance a couple years back called Pervert Park. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not.
It's basically about an RV park where a bunch of,
perverts,
basically sexual deviants, I guess you could say,
okay.
People have been convicted of, all sorts of terrible things. They basically can't find living anywhere else other than this RV park. So there's a bunch of pedophiles, rapists, terrible.
Oh, Jesus.
Things that have happened at this one place. But it's interesting because it kind of takes you into their world a little bit, and it interviews with them, talks with them about, what their history is, how, whatever happened. So it's kind of it definitely doesn't give, like an okay to what they did, but it definitely humanizes it a little bit. And it kind of opened my eyes to that world. And so if anybody's looking for a nice, depressing, really serious documentary, go ahead and go watch Pervert Park. But it's really well made. Really fantastic documentary filmmaking, if you ask me. So,
and then also after that, just watch Tommy Boy and you'll be fine.
Yes, and then watch Tommy Boy. Oh yeah, Tommy Boy's the best.
So, Josh, where can people find you?
So I'm on pretty much any social media platform. Of course, you can find me at the website, the course website. You can even chat with me at any time down at the bottom right there if you'd like. I'm on Twitter at Josh L. Gibson. Facebook. I mean, you just search for me. My website is joshgibson.me as well. So if you just want to go there, you can find, I think it's at the bottom left. There's all my social media icons and stuff. So
if anybody,
feel free to reach out.
If anybody needs a good 360 guide, give Josh a call. He'll help you out. So Josh, man, thank you so much for answering all of our questions, man. I really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. Was very happy to come on, and it was a great time.
Well, if you didn't know anything about 360 video before, you definitely know something about it now. Josh was amazing, and thank you, Josh, so much for dropping some major knowledge bombs on us about shooting 360. I think, guys, it's honestly a really interesting tool to tell stories in a unique way. I don't think, again, like I said before, it's going to replace cinema as we know it, but it is definitely not a fad like smell-o-vision or something like that. I do think it's going to be around for a while, and there is definitely some potential for filmmakers to go out there, make a living, make money, do projects with it. So definitely check it out. And if you actually want to take Josh's course, which is the 360 Academy, Josh usually sells that course for $789, which honestly is a bargain based on what you're going to be getting at it if you're getting into the 360 world. But with the coupon code HUSTLE, you get $679 or $689 off. So the course turns into $100. So that's a hell of a gift for all of the Indie Film Hustle tribe looking to get into 360 video. So just go to www.360videoacademy.com and type in the coupon code HUSTLE to get $689 off the course. Again, if you guys are really interested in 360 video, Josh's course is really great. I did take it. It's pretty awesome, to tell you the truth, and I learned a lot. So if you're into 360 video, definitely check it out. I'll put a link and for everything we talked about in the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/157. And guys, if you like the show, please head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave an honest review on iTunes. It helps out a lot. It really does help me out a lot. Helps the show get out there to more and more filmmakers. So please head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave a hopefully good review. Until next time, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.